I don't know why her words stayed with me. Maybe because nobody had ever said them to me before. It started with something simple. I was at my cousin's house on a late Sunday afternoon, helping fix the back door that had been sticking all summer. He'd gone out to run an errand, leaving me with a crooked screwdriver, a door that didn't want to cooperate, and his wife, Elena. Elena was the kind of woman who filled a room without trying. Mid-40s, hair tied back loosely, a soft cotton shirt that slipped at the shoulder every time she leaned forward. She carried herself like someone who had learned to apologize less with age, though I noticed she still did, with small sighs, half smiles, hands brushing invisible dust from the counter. "You're patient with it," she said, watching me crouched on the floor, fiddling with the hinge. "It's just a door," I muttered, though I could feel her eyes on me longer than was necessary. My hands suddenly felt too big for the job, clumsy under her attention. She lingered by the frame, arms crossed but relaxed. "No, you always knew how to listen. That's rarer than you think." The words hit harder than they should have. I don't remember her ever saying something like that to me before. My cousin always joked about me being the quiet one, the easy one. But coming from her, the same words carried weight, as if she had noticed something he never had. I tightened the last screw, though it didn't need it, just to give myself a second to breathe. The air between us had shifted, not in any obvious way, but in the quiet that followed her remark. When I stood up, we were closer than I expected. She didn't step back. "You make it sound like I'm some kind of—" I tried to laugh, but the words tangled in my throat. "Some kind of what?" Her tone was light, but there was a pause at the end, like she wasn't sure if she wanted the answer. I shrugged, avoiding her gaze, focusing instead on the tiny speck of dust on her sleeve. Doesn't matter, but it did. It mattered in the way my chest tightened, in how my palms itched to touch something, anything, just to release the charge in the air. She shifted her weight, brushing a loose strand of hair back behind her ear. The silence stretched. I could hear the refrigerator hum, the faint tick of the clock in the hallway. Finally, she broke it with a half-smile. "You look so serious. You always did. Like the world's pressing down on your shoulders and you're not even 25 yet." "I'm 22, I said, more defensive than I meant to be. Her smile deepened, but she didn't laugh at me. She just looked at me, long enough that I had to glance away. Something in her expression made me wonder if she'd said too much. If maybe, for a second, we both knew this wasn't just about a door anymore. I wiped my hands on my jeans, though there was nothing to clean off. Well, it should close properly now. Elena reached past me to test it. Her arm brushed mine. Light, unintentional, but enough to send a sharp current up my skin. The door clicked shut without resistance. She left her hand on the knob, not moving it right away. Then she looked at me, really looked, and for the first time I saw hesitation flicker in her eyes. "You always knew how to listen," she repeated, softer this time. And before I could answer, the sound of my cousin's car pulling into the driveway cut through the moment. If I'd left right then, when my cousin walked back through the door, maybe things would have stayed ordinary. But I didn't. He dropped a bag of groceries on the counter, kissed Elena lightly on the cheek, and asked about the door. She smiled, said it worked perfectly now, and that was that. No mention of the way her arm had brushed mine. No sign of the silence we'd shared. And yet, when he disappeared into the living room with his phone, she found me again in the kitchen. "You drink coffee this late?" she asked, already reaching for the mugs. "Not usually," I said, though I sat down anyway. Her hand trembled just slightly as she poured, so faint I might have imagined it. She placed a steaming cup in front of me, then leaned on the counter opposite, arms folded, like she didn't trust herself to sit closer. That was when it hit me why this felt dangerous. She wasn't just older, not just my cousin's wife. She looked at me in a way he never had, as though the things I didn't say were louder than the ones I did. "You've grown up," she said finally. Not a compliment, not quite. More like she was reminding herself. "I guess." My voice cracked, and I hated it. Her eyes softened. "No, I mean, it's strange. You were just a kid sitting at that table last year, quiet as always, nodding at everyone else's stories. Now you're fixing doors, carrying yourself like... She stopped, biting her lip. Like you don't need anyone anymore. I wanted to laugh at that. If she only knew how wrong she was. I needed more than I could say, but not in the way she thought. Instead, I said, I still listen. The words sounded heavier than I meant them to. She blinked, then looked down at her mug. I shouldn't say things like that, she murmured. It's been a hard few months. He doesn't notice the small things. Her voice cracked on notice. That was the first time I'd ever heard it. The faint fracture in Elena's tone, as if something inside her had been carrying too much weight. I wanted to ask her what she meant, but the question stuck. So I studied the details instead. The way her nail tapped the rim of her mug, the crease in her shirt where she'd been leaning against the counter, the shadow beneath her eyes that even her careful smile couldn't hide. The silence pressed in. I should have finished my coffee, thanked her, gone home. But I couldn't. She finally lifted her gaze, and for a second it was as though the kitchen shrank around us, leaving just her and me. Stay a little longer, she said, almost casual. Almost. Her fingers brushed my arm as she passed, not long enough to call it deliberate, but far too long to be an accident. I gripped the mug tighter, afraid of what I might say next. I told myself staying wasn't a big deal. Just a coffee, just a conversation. But the longer I sat there, the harder it became to believe it. Elena had pulled her legs up onto the chair, knees bent, like she'd forgotten she wasn't alone. Her hair had slipped loose from its tie, strands falling around her face. She looked softer this way, unguarded, almost fragile, and I found myself staring too long. You're quiet again, she said, tilting her head. I'm just listening, I muttered. Her smile was faint, but it carried something sharper beneath it. Careful. You make me feel like I have to tell you the truth. I swallowed. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. The words slipped out before I could stop them. She froze, her hand hovering above her cup. For a second, I thought she might actually answer. Instead, she looked away, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. You shouldn't say things like that, she whispered. I wanted to apologize, but my throat locked up. The silence stretched, too heavy, until she broke it herself with a laugh that didn't sound like laughter. God, listen to me. She stopped, biting her lip. Forget it. Her hand grazed mine on the table when she reached for her cup. Neither of us moved right away. My fingers twitched, aching to close around hers, but I forced myself to pull back. My heart was hammering, loud enough I was sure she could hear it. Then, like fate mocking us, her phone buzzed sharply against the counter. We both jumped. She snatched it quickly, glancing at the screen before setting it face down. Work, she said, though her voice was tight, her hand still pressing the phone into the wood as if holding it down. The interruption should have broken the spell, but it didn't. If anything, it made the room feel even smaller, like the world outside had almost caught us. I pushed my chair back, trying to breathe, to regain the distance I knew I needed. I should probably... Don't, she cut in too quickly. Her eyes found mine again, wide, searching. Just a little longer. Please. The word please hit me harder than anything else she'd said. I sat back down. I didn't trust myself to speak, not when everything in me wanted to close the gap between us. Her hand shifted closer to mine again, stopping just short. She didn't touch me this time, but the space between us burned hotter than skin on skin. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Her phone buzzed again, unanswered. And in that tight silence, with her so close I could see the faint tremor in her fingers, I realized I wasn't sure either of us could stop if one of us leaned forward. The second buzz of her phone went ignored. She didn't even look at it this time. I wanted to ask who it was, but I didn't. I was afraid of the answer, afraid it might remind us of where we stood. Elena, I said quietly, just her name, felt dangerous even on my tongue. She looked up, startled, like no one had spoken to her that way in years. I shouldn't be here, I went on. Not like this. Not this late. You're fixing a door, she said. but her voice wavered. Having coffee. I almost laughed. Is that what this is? Her lips parted as if to reply, but nothing came out. She set her mug down, hard enough that the sound echoed. You think I don't notice? She said suddenly. Notice what? The way you look at me. I froze. My chest tightened. Every excuse I'd been holding on to shattering in an instant. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, searching my face. I shouldn't say that. God, I shouldn't. But I feel it. And I don't know if it's wrong, or if it's the first real thing I've felt in months. The room spun. I couldn't look away from her, couldn't find the safe words that would undo what she just admitted. Elena! Her hand moved again, closer this time, her fingers brushing the back of mine. The contact was feather-light, but it unraveled me. I wanted to tell her everything I'd been holding back. The way I thought of her too often, the way my cousin didn't see her the way I did. But the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I whispered, "You don't know how hard it is not to." Her breath caught. For a moment, I thought she might pull away. But she didn't. Say it, she murmured. If you mean it, say it. I clenched my fists against the table. My pulse hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. I can't, I said. If I do, I don't think I'll stop. She inhaled sharply, her eyes glistening with something I couldn't name. Then, slowly, she leaned back, but her gaze never left mine. The air between us vibrated, unbearable. The clock ticked. The phone buzzed again. Neither of us moved. Finally, she whispered, barely audible, "What are we doing?" And all I could do was stare at her. The silence thick, every answer too dangerous to speak aloud. The silence stretched so long I thought it might break me. Her question, "What are we doing?" still echoed in the air when the front door clicked open again. Elena! My cousin's voice called from the hallway. She shot upright in her chair, pulling her hand away so quickly it might have burned her. I scrambled to stand, nearly knocking over my mug. "I thought you went to bed," she called back, too quickly. "Forgot my keys in the truck," he said, footsteps moving past us toward the door again. "Be right back." The front door shut, and the house was silent again. But everything had changed. Her shoulders sagged. She didn't look at me, just stared down at the table. "You should go," she whispered. My throat tightened. "Is that what you want?" Finally, her eyes met mine, and I saw something in them I hadn't expected. Not just guilt, not just hesitation, fear. "It doesn't matter what I want," she said. The words cut deeper than anything else so far. And then, like she couldn't stop herself, she added, "You think you're the only one who's been listening? I hear you too. I always have." I froze. "What do you mean?" She pressed her palm to her forehead, closing her eyes like she'd already said too much. "Last year, that night in the kitchen after everyone else went to bed. You don't remember, do you?" Images flickered, her pouring wine, me lingering at the counter, both of us laughing too softly. I'd gone to bed replaying her smile, certain it had meant nothing. "You were watching me then too," she whispered. "And I—" She broke off, biting her lip hard. "I noticed." The room felt suddenly smaller, like the walls were pressing in. All this time I'd thought I was carrying something alone, but she had felt it too. "Elena!" My voice cracked. "I shouldn't have said that," she murmured, standing abruptly. "You need to leave. Now." I stood too, my pulse racing. "Don't do that. Don't pretend like none of this is real." Her eyes flashed. Anger, fear, maybe both. "Real? You have no idea what's at stake." "Then tell me," I said, louder than I meant to. She stared at me, lips parted, chest rising and falling fast. The sound of tires crunching on the driveway cut through the standoff. My cousin, back again. Her hand gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles whitened. Then, softer, trembling, she whispered words that lodged like a knife in my chest. "If you stay, I don't think I'll be able to stop." The front door opened. Her eyes locked on mine, wide with fear and something else I couldn't name. And I knew, in that suspended moment, nothing between us would ever be the same again. The front door clicked shut again as my cousin moved down the hall, muttering about unloading groceries. The moment stretched tight between Elena and me. Every second waited with what she'd just said. If you stay, I don't think I'll be able to stop. Her eyes were still on me, wide and almost panicked, like she couldn't believe the words had slipped out. I should have left right then, walked past her, past my cousin, into the night and back to something safer. But my legs wouldn't move. Elena, I said quietly. She shook her head, whispering, don't, please. But I couldn't stop. You've been holding this in as much as I have, haven't you? Her breath caught, and in that pause, I knew I was right. She pressed her palm flat against the table, grounding herself. Do you have any idea what this would mean? What it would do? Yes, I said too fast. My voice cracked. But it doesn't change the fact that I can't stop thinking about you. Her hand trembled. She closed her eyes, shoulders slumping like the fight had drained out of her. You don't know what you're saying. I do, I whispered. She looked up then, and I swear something broke inside her. The mask she always wore, steady, composed, untouchable, slipped. Her eyes were wet, her lip caught between her teeth. You make me feel seen, she said, so soft I almost missed it. The words froze me, because that was all I had wanted too, for her to know I wasn't just looking at her, but really seeing her. I don't want to ruin anything, I managed. She laughed bitterly, wiping at her eye. It's already ruined, isn't it? For a long moment, neither of us moved. The air was too heavy, our silence too loaded. I thought of the night she'd remembered, the one I'd buried as nothing, and wondered if everything since had been leading to this. Her footsteps finally broke the stillness. She came closer, not fast, not reckless, just steady. When she reached me, she stopped inches away. Her hand lifted, hesitated, then rested lightly on my arm. You shouldn't love me, she whispered. But I think you might. I swallowed hard. My chest ached with the weight of everything I couldn't say I do. I already do. Behind us, I heard the thud of a bag of groceries hitting the counter. My cousin humming to himself, unaware. I leaned in close enough that I could feel her breath, but not enough to close the space. My voice was barely a breath. Tell me to walk away, and I will. Her eyes glistened, torn, searching mine. She didn't speak. The silence was her answer, heavy and final, and it hung between us like a promise neither of us could take back. When I think back to that night, it wasn't the words we said that stayed with me. It was the silence. The pause heavy enough to change everything, the kind of silence you don't forget. I didn't walk away. Not then. I stayed, helping my cousin unload the last of the groceries, pretending nothing had shifted. But between Elena and me, everything had. After that, there was no unseeing it. Every glance stretched too long. Every brush of her hand felt like a secret. We became careful, impossibly careful, but the carefulness only made the weight of it stronger. One night, weeks later, she asked me to fix the leaky faucet in the upstairs bathroom. My cousin had gone out again, and I knew I should have said no. But I didn't. I remember standing there, wrench in hand, water dripping in slow, steady beats, when she finally said what neither of us had dared. I can't go back to how it was. Her voice shook, but her eyes were steady. I didn't answer right away. I just set the wrench down and sat on the edge of the tub, staring at the floor, feeling my chest tighten, because I knew exactly what she meant. I couldn't go back either. I don't want to ruin your life, I whispered. She stepped closer, her hand brushing my shoulder, gentle but certain. You're not ruining it. You're the only part of it that feels alive. That was the moment everything broke. The line we'd drawn, the distance we'd fought for gone. I kissed her, and she kissed me back like it had been waiting there all along. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean. Came with guilt, with risk, with the knowledge that every choice after would be harder. But it was real. More real than anything either of us had allowed ourselves to admit. Looking back now, I know it wasn't about fixing doors or faucets. It wasn't even about the wrongness of it all. It was about two people who saw each other when no one else did, who carried too much in silence until it had to spill over. And maybe that's the point. Sometimes it isn't about what's right or wrong, but about what's true. I won't pretend the road after was easy, but I can tell you this. When she looked at me that night, when her voice broke and she said she couldn't go back, I understood something I hadn't before. Love doesn't always arrive when it should. But when it does,